perfect can oftentimes be the enemy of good. And if you're always striving for perfection, but you're afraid to launch, that's no good because it's not going to help you drive revenue.
If your business is overwhelmed with leads and wants to make sure that you're focusing on the highest quality leads, you actually might want to put up some barriers.
Try to find a brand that you can build around, because if you build around a good brand, you're actually helping build equity in your company that Google, with an algorithm change, can't wipe away.
One of the things that we have an advantage of as humans is the ability to go out to a market and position yourself as the knowledgeable expert in the area. The goal is a website that's going to drive revenue for your business. What is the one thing that you want people to do when they get here and they should be hit over the face with what that is? Welcome, everyone. This is a site audit from the OptSus marketing community. In the community, we believe in providing people with not only the tools, but also the knowledge for sustainable growth and digital marketing. One of the things to keep in mind with this audit is that the goal is not to pick apart this website and find a bunch of problems. I'm not here to pick on Eric and say, you got all these things wrong and why did you do a bad job? I want to be very upfront and clear that if you look at my own websites, you'll find no less than 1,000 problems with those websites as well. So the goal here instead is to look at a website and consider the, let's say, academic SEO and digital marketing things that maybe should be done if we were doing a textbook thing with unlimited money and unlimited time, and ask questions about why a business would make these different decisions in order to better understand the compromises that any small business is going to need, because the goal with the website is to derive profit for the business. So this is an important thing to consider as you're going through any type of website audit. You don't want to get everything perfect. You want to get things right in order to move the business forward and derive profit. Eric, do you have anything you want to add to that before we jump into your site?
Yeah, Frank, I think you nailed it. The one thing that you see from a lot of business owners is they might be afraid to launch because their content or the web page or everything isn't perfect. But perfect can oftentimes be the enemy of good. And if you're always striving for perfection, but you're afraid to launch, that's no good because it's not going to help you drive revenue. So a lot of times when you launch what's good enough, you can not only get your information out there and start driving revenue, but you can also learn from it and you can test it in the future. I'm glad to have this dialogue. I think this is going to be a great opportunity for the people watching, but also for myself.
I love that point with testing. I cannot count the number of times that clients have asked me, what is the best XYZ? And I have to point out to them that I have my opinion. They have their opinion. What's most important is getting something out there and see what the customer does with it. And if the customer reacts in a way that drives revenue for the business, that is the best. And you won't know that until you start testing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So right up at the top here, I've got the initial overview of the website. So I'm going to turn on my screen sharing here. And I'm starting at your homepage. So we're going to begin with that. And all right, we've got Zoom getting out of the way and we have your homepage up. I see a pop-up. I didn't even accept anything because I wanted to show what it looks like when it first comes up for any user. Okay. And you do have the privacy statements. This is a really important thing that a lot of small businesses overlook, is being compliant with privacy statements, because in digital marketing, we are trying to collect data about our users in order to A, figure out what's working. We already touched on that. But B, figure out who we should be showing ads to, all kinds of different areas that we're going to use that data. So make sure that you do have your privacy statements in place.
Especially too, with Frank, one of the things that I want to mention is a lot of people think because privacy really got a big boost with the GDPR in Europe, but in America, California has their own privacy act and a lot of states are starting to work towards that too. So it's really going to be important in the United States in the next year or two to really make sure that you lock this down, because privacy is going to continue to become more and more important with digital marketing.
I'm curious, with the cookie consent that you have here, The privacy statements, how do you put together your terms of service, privacy statements on the website?
I haven't done a lot with this one yet. I just launched my website 2 weeks ago. So the privacy statements I'm just using what came with so I have a WordPress site and I installed the private cookie plugin, and I'm just using their basic stuff. As I get a little bit more mature with my website, I will customize it so that it's more functioning for what I look at. So generally what I would look at from my perspective is I may do some email marketing. I wouldn't do any kind of advertising, and I wouldn't be selling any information to any third parties. So I would be specific in that, letting them know how I use their data. And one of the things that's important for people, especially small businesses, to understand is private information is almost anything that's specific to a user. So if you have an email address, that's private information. If you have a person's name, that's private information. So it's not just that you have credit card numbers or passwords and logins. It's pretty much anything that can help identify a user. That's what you're helping people understand. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using, when I customize mine, I want to make sure that they understand, one, I don't sell information; two, how I'm going to be using it, primarily through email marketing or that. And then three, making sure they understand how to opt out.
One of the things to keep in mind, you mentioned with the website being new and just having been launched, I did not see the links to the privacy statements in the footer here. Whenever you do get started running ads, it'll be very important to have those links in there. You can actually have your ad accounts either paused or terminated if you don't have your privacy policies and terms in the footers there. The tool that I use to be able to make this as easy as possible for myself and for clients is a tool called Termageddon through OptSus. We do have a discount code. The code is OptSus, OptSus, and that knocks off 10% on the price. Obviously, that's an affiliate code, but I use that on my own websites and on client websites. So if you want to see what they look like, you can go to the footer of the OptSus website and you'll see those terms there. The thing that I like about what Termageddon has done is that they have a legal team that looks at all of these changing regulations globally, and they have turned this legalese into a fairly simple, and there's a bunch of items that you have to look at and consider, but a relatively simple form that you can just read through and in pretty much plain language, identify and check off the things that you're planning on doing on your website for marketing. And then it customizes your privacy policies and term documents and things like that. It solves the problem at a very reasonable price.
That's awesome.
Since they launched, there's, I don't know, a dozen or maybe 100 different services that are very similar. You can compare and contrast if you want to. I've been using Termageddon for a while, and they're getting the job done for that. I've talked with a bunch of other people that had a little bit more strict requirements that are in a highly regulated industry. And so they will have the terms and the privacy policies drafted by a large language model like ChatGPT. And then they'll take that and have a real lawyer look it over. I think the biggest mistake is to have the robot write it, and then you have the legal liability that comes with having a robot publish something.
Yes.
Instead, there's a nice little hybrid that you can create where the robot writes the first draft and then the lawyer makes sure that it actually would be legally sound. But you spend a little bit less on the lawyer because they don't have to write the first draft. So
Nice.
That's a good use as well. One of the things that stands out to me is the scroll down to learn more. I've looked at this website on mobile as well as this desktop experience. This makes a little bit less sense on the desktop because the way that the page breaks, it's obvious that you would scroll down. On a mobile device, this banner at the top does take up most of the screen, and it really depends on the device that you're using as to where exactly that break point is. I would personally suggest adjusting the design so that way you don't have to actually put the words there telling people to scroll down, but rather you have a design aspect like you can see on the desktop here. Without those words, I can see that there's another whole section and that I can only see part of that section and I can only see part of this image. So without being prompted to, I know that there's more. And as soon as I scroll down, again, I see that there's more. There's the top of the letters showing here. So that gives a subconscious desire to continue to scroll down without explicitly having to take up space with those words.
No, that's a great point. It is more for the mobile. And the one thing I completely missed on this was so this is WordPress and it's a Divi theme. And in Divi, they make it super easy. I can modify this so it just appears on the mobile. I would agree. Most of the time when I consult with companies, I let them know you don't want to have to put those kind of words in because it does take up space. So I would agree. I will actually take a look at the mobile and see if there's any adjustments I can make. It's a great point.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that change might look like. I see that you're also using the gradient at the top here. You might be able to change the gradient to have a diagonal to it. So that way it's pointing down. So the image on the page points you down the page. There's some little design changes that you can make along those lines to just shift the way that the user feels when they arrive at the page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right at the top of the page, I see that you've got your phone number here. So a great aspect for driving the main objective that I would expect for this page is that you want your phone to ring. Depending on the business, there are different avenues that you're looking to be able to close a sale. For some businesses, you want people to fill out a form. If you're using a form, you can expect that you're probably going to get a smaller response rate than you are if you have a more direct fire off an email to me or give me a call, primary call to action. That can be a benefit or a drawback. If your business is dying for more leads, then you want to have a more direct point of contact. If your business is overwhelmed with leads and wants to make sure that you're focusing on the highest quality leads, you actually might want to put up some barriers. So this is an important thing that I think most people overlook when they're thinking about how do I want to get people from my website over to my business. In some cases, you want to get the most people over to your business possible. In other cases, you actually want to slow down the flow of leads coming from your website over to your business.
Yes.
The example I always love to bring up with this is publishing your business's hours on your website. A guaranteed way to make your phone ring more is to not have your hours there because people are going to have to call you to ask your hours. But that's not going to bring revenue and profits into your business. That's going to require you to pay someone to answer the phone for all of those calls where people are just asking for your hours, which could be simply listed on your website. So think about what it is that you're actually wanting to pay for with labor. You do want to make your phone ring, correct?
Yeah. And one of the things that I adjusted with it is on mobile. So like on the desktop, and I don't know the exact term for it, but the menu stays at the top as you scroll. It doesn't automatically do that because the mobile version is a little bit different the way that they put the menu in. But you can go into the CSS or the style sheets and you can actually add some code. And now if somebody's on my mobile phone, that phone number stays up at the top, which for mobile is really important because desktop, people are probably going to call they're actually going to call and put the number into their phone. On a mobile, they're going to click right from that link to their phone call. So I think that from a mobile perspective, it's really important to have that phone number up at the top all the time.
Definitely. It's also very important to wrap that phone number in a click to call link.
Yep.
And I would suggest doing that on desktop. And the reason I recommend doing that on desktop as well is that it depends on the user's settings. If they have their computer and their phone set up in the right way, they can click the number on their desktop computer and pick up the call on their phone.
Oh, cool.
By having that click to call link set up that way, even if they are on a desktop device, they can still make those phone calls.
Great.
So scrolling down the page, all of your paragraphs are short, easy to skim. You've got different sections to make it easy to look through the whole page. You've got some images along with paragraphs and bullet lists. You do search engine optimization. And so you're familiar with peppering in your keywords and breaking up the page to make it easy for people to be able to skim that content. You have internal links pointing between your different pages. All of these are good on-page SEO foundational elements that you want to have in place. And all of that is looking very good. But you also have links to external websites. I haven't clicked on any of these, but let's see. Okay, so that does take my primary browser over to Google Search Central here. I would actually recommend all external links being configured to open in a new tab.
Yep.
It's important to do that with external versus internal links, at least in my opinion, for user behavior. Even with login links, I've been to many websites where I click the link to log in and it opens a new tab. And it just frustrates me because all I have to do now is go back and close the other tab because I just said I'm logging into your product. I already have a user account on your website. I've already signed up to pay you money. And instead of opening it in the same browser, they've decided to open it in a new tab, causing me frustration because I have to go back and close the other tab. So if it's on your domain or within your suite of products, my recommendation, my personal preference as well, is when I click on the link, I expect to stay in the same browser tab. But if I'm clicking on a link that's taking me to a different product, to a different website, it's actually helpful if that opens in a new tab, because I may not be done with what I was reading on your website, and going to this other page might take me down a rabbit hole where I forget to come back to you. But keeping your website in another tab actually makes it easier for me to go down this rabbit hole, go learn this thing, and then come back to where I started. It's really important to think about the user behavior and consider those things as you're building your website. That's why I point back to those login links where I click the login link and it opens in a new tab. Some developer somewhere hasn't thought about, is this actually helpful to the user? And as a result, they're causing me frustration.
And another thing to point out too is adding. So basically any link it's an href link when you look at the code, it's an href link, and it's really easy, whether you're using like a Divi builder like I use, or if you're putting code in there, you're able to add in that href, you're able to add just one little piece of thing that tells it open in a new tab. It's actually very easy to do. It's not hard to do. And I would agree, any external link, I should have that so that it does. Because the other part is on internal, you can always click the back button to go back, or I don't have breadcrumbs on mine yet. I will, but I would agree. You want to have any external links open in a new tab.
I just pulled up, since you were mentioning the href link, the way that it's actually formatted in the HTML, I pulled up the developer tools so people following along can see that on screen, what that HTML looks like. You can use this for troubleshooting and such if anybody's not familiar with this, but you'd have to make the change on your website. I'm looking at the public side of the site. Sometimes when I bring this up with clients, they're like, "Oh my God, are you hacking my website right now?"
So yeah, it's a browser-based tool, and you can actually, once you get more familiar with it, you can actually go through and tweak on the browser so you can see how things change. Like that above where you're looking on my page, you have what is SEO. If you wanted to see what that looked like in red, you can actually go in and change it. And again, you're not changing the website, you're changing how the browser is interpreting the website. This tool is just fantastic.
While I have this open, we can take a quick look at the console, and I don't see any errors that came up on this particular page. As you are designing this site, what's the primary goal that you're after?
The primary goal is to get people familiar with me and my brand. I chose Silver Fox MKE, and this was actually the discussion that I had with you, Frank. We were talking about when I first created my SEO consulting company, I was originally looking at domain names, trying to figure out what I wanted to use, what was available. And we had a discussion that was really enlightening to me, where we talked about, guided me and said, try to find a brand that you can build around. Because if you build around a good brand, you're actually helping build equity in your company that Google, with an algorithm change, can't wipe away. So if you're building a strong equity in your brand, that is going to benefit you way more than a domain name that might have a keyword that you want to try to optimize for. Because I have gray hair, and my primary audience, I do national. I've got a few clients in different cities around the country, but primarily my target audience is Southeastern Wisconsin, the greater Milwaukee area. And I want people that when I'm talking, doing presentations, when I'm talking to prospective clients, when I'm talking to existing clients, they're going to recognize I have gray hair. So when I use the name Silver Fox MKE, it's super easy for them to understand who I am. I've had really good response to people. And frankly, it's worked great because I've had people that I've talked to just once or twice and they're like, "You're the Silver Fox." And I'm like, "Yep, I'm Silver Fox MKE." So one of the top goals I have with this is continuing to build that brand. And that's why I put that avatar type logo in there. The secondary is I want people to understand that I'm really good at SEO and that my rates are affordable. And I want them to understand what my background is and why they should choose me as an SEO consultant.
That's a really good point with the branding. We had talked about this and how you can be able to, come up with a name that when you go to the networking events and such, it's easy for someone to remember and they call you by that name when you attend other events or when they bump into you again. But another reason for that is actually related to search engine optimization. So if you want to talk about, let's say, link building, right? There's a million people on the internet talking about link building. It is going to be incredibly difficult to rank at the top of the list on search for the broad keyword link building. But if you decide that you want to connect your brand with that keyword, you can actually host events and go talk to people about link building on a regular basis and develop a reputation. So that way, when people want to find what you're saying about it, they're not going to go type into the search engine the broader term link building. They want to know what Silver Fox says about link building. And so they're going to type in Silver Fox link building, which is where that branding really helps out, because no matter what changes in algorithms, if they're looking for what your brand has to say about the topic, then the search algorithm is going to put your content at the top. But if you're going after the broader terms of link building, there's a million different ways to define what is a good search result for that. If they're putting
Absolutely.
your brand along with it, there's only one way to define a good result. That's your content.
And I think that one of the things that you raise is really important because a lot of times people discount branded keywords. So when they're looking at their SEO and people will look at their keywords, they'll pull down a list from like SEMrush or SpyFu or one of the tools, and they'll get rid of all their branded keywords. But in reality, you always want to take a look at those because just like we're talking about, those branded keywords really have a strong benefit to you because other people may try to piggyback on there. And so like right now with my brand, there's a Silver Fox Digital in Qatar, and that's why I have Silver Fox. As I mentioned, I do national SEO. I have a couple of customers that are in other cities, but my primary demographic is Southeastern Wisconsin. That's where I spend the most time doing speaking. That's the place I do the most time doing networking. And to me, that's really where I want to build my brand. And so, as you mentioned, if I build a tutorial that I want to get out to people, I may not be able to rank for link building, that tutorial on link building, but people in Southeastern Wisconsin are going to, if they see Silver Fox MKE link building, they're going to have a higher value with that. And they're going to place a lot more importance on it.
That's a really good example of, we've got the advent of all these AI tools, the large language models, and they are definitely disrupting a bunch of industries and changing the way that work is done in a lot of ways. But one of the things that we have an advantage of as humans is the ability to go out to a market and position yourself as the knowledgeable expert in the area. As I talked about at the start of the call, talking about the OptSus marketing community and you being in that community, you and I both do search engine optimization. In a global scale, yeah, we're competitors. We're both looking for clients that do search engine optimization. That's perfectly fine because I can't service the entire world, and I'm pretty sure that you can't either. So the market's too big for us anyway, and we each have our own smaller domain where there are people that know us, that we have a personal network, that the people that know and have interacted with Frank are looking for, what does Frank have to say about each of these SEO topics? The people that know and have interacted with Eric are looking for, what does Eric have to say about each of these different topics? And we've both built separate brands. You've got Silver Fox, I've got OptSus Marketing, that we're trying to shift from just what does Frank and what does Eric say about these things to what does OptSus and what does Silver Fox say about these things. But the AIs can't really compete with going to real in-person events and helping other people solve problems in their businesses.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed.
So I think that we've got a good idea of the website. You can see in the menu here, for those that are watching, there's a few pages of content. This is a brand new site, so it's got a small amount of content to begin with. And we're going to hop over to Ahrefs and take a look to see what is going on with the SEO on this site. As you might expect with a new website, we've got only a few pages that are indexed and not a lot of traffic at this point. This is not a surprise. The next thing, because we're going to breeze right through Ahrefs, is taking a look at PageSpeed Insights. So we can see here that the performance and the accessibility on mobile is in this orange here. There's a little bit of work necessary, but it's pretty darn good. Best practices and SEO at 100%. And we can see an image of what that homepage looks like on a mobile device, which is where you can see the reason for that text that says to scroll down.
Yep.
The homepage header image takes up the whole screen. If we look at it on a desktop, you can see that the numbers change a little bit. Performance goes up. Mobile devices tend to have slower connections. And you can see where the page is rendered where it's obvious that there's more content to scroll down to.
And one thing I do want to point out too is a lot of people, if they're not developers or they don't work in websites, if they're just business owners, one of the reasons that you want to pay attention to mobile more so than desktop is that Google uses mobile even for desktop. They see how you perform on mobile. And even if you're visitors, like I work with a number of manufacturing clients who probably 60 to 70% of their users are coming from desktop. Google doesn't really look at it from that perspective. They want to make sure that if you have a website, your mobile is rendering quickly because they know that's the future. And so you always want to pay attention to your mobile. Even if your primary target audience is desktop users, you always want to pay attention to mobile.
Definitely. The latest data I was looking at was saying that internet traffic is a little over 60% mobile devices. And if you're a search engine, you're catering to the largest possible audience, and over 60% of that audience is on mobile devices. That makes it your new priority. So you definitely want to go with mobile first design and development for your website.
Yep.
One of the things that I noticed is that the word Milwaukee, depending on which device I was rendering this on, might be hyphenated or broken into a couple of lines, because that is a long word to have in there. That's going to be a challenging thing to deal with across various mobile devices. And there are some tools that allow you to render your website on a collection of different devices. They'll run virtual emulators of those, so that way you can see exactly what it'll look like with specific browsers, specific operating systems, and specific screen sizes. That's often a good thing to do once or twice a year on a website. Just run through and see if there are any things that are broken. But at the same time, you're not going to make it look perfect on every single device.
And I think Inspect allows you to do that, and you can choose whatever device you're using.
Yeah, the browser does allow you to do some of that. The way that it actually does it, though, is that it's just changing your screen area to match the size of the screen on the device. And it has a small selection of devices. It's a great place to start. These other tools, they're not too terribly expensive, but they actually load the entire software package, the operating system and the browser for each of these devices, and then show you what that screen looks like. Sometimes there can be some compatibility differences depending on which operating system and which browser you're using that don't show up from simply changing the resolution of the screen that you're looking at it on. It also depends on the business that you're working with. For some of my clients, that is extremely important to them, and we've got a list of 25 devices that we test against. For others, as long as it looks good on the business owner's personal cell phone, they're happy.
Yeah, exactly.
What value and what weight you put on that is going to change from one business to the other. I hopped over to the next page here, and same thing. Best practices in SEO are looking very good. And the last page here, same thing. You've got good numbers. I would not invest a whole lot of time and energy into moving these numbers from where you're at right now. I don't see a lot of reds. I don't see a lot of very low scores. The goal is a website that's going to drive revenue for your business.
Cool.
So as we're wrapping up here, I do want to take just a moment to talk about conversion rate optimization. We've talked about what the primary goal is on the website. And one of the rules that I like to use, I've heard it in a variety of different ways. The one that sticks in my mind is the 10-foot rule. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
So the idea with the 10-foot rule is that you pull up your website and you go to the other side of the room, about 10 feet away. And at that distance, you can't really read the words that are on the screen. And you want to see, what is this website communicating to me is the primary call to action. It should stand out. So that way the user, when they're sitting at their computer, they don't have to think about it. This is where the use of different colors and different fonts can really stand out. Having a certain color that's always used on the buy now button across your entire website creates a psychological connection to, when I see this color, I want to click. So looking at your homepage, the thing that stands out to me is you've got your profile picture and connecting where the silver fox name comes from with your illustrative kind of picture. You've got the affordable SEO and internet marketing that really stands out to me. But the things that don't stand out are the phone number. It is there in the top header, but having maybe replacing the scroll down to learn more with a button that calls out and says, give me a call, something like that really pops, or a form if that was the primary call to action. Putting something towards the top and frequently towards the middle and or bottom of the pages helps to make sure that people are doing that one thing. What is the one thing that you want people to do when they get here? And they should be hit over the face with what that is, so they don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
As we're wrapping it up here, coming up on the end of our site audit, do you have any questions, comments, concerns, and what actionable things are you planning on doing?
No, this has been great. I don't have any questions. Some of the stuff I'm going to look at is I want to look at how my browser is rendering the menu or the hero page section on how it is with mobile. I also want to take a look at adding hours because I think that is going to be important. But I've gained a lot of insight. This was fantastic.
Thank you very much. It was great chatting with you about this. And I just want to reiterate that the goal with these site audits and also the goal with the OptSus marketing community is to drive home the point that a website for a business, for any business, a small business or a large business, should be a continuous work in progress. There's always things that can be improved, and you want to make sure that you're keeping your focus on how do we drive the bottom line for the business. It's easy to get lost in the SEO and the web development, technical aspects, and lose sight of how do we drive more revenue for this business.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
very
great.
much for bringing your site for an audit. I look forward to engaging with you in the OptSus marketing community some more.
Great. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.